100 years ago, on October 16, 1923, Walt Disney produced Alice's Wonderland. On the same day, he and his brother founded Disney Animation Studios, which is now the longest running animation studio in the world. And I'm going to play like a little clip. Last year, Sony produced Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, an impressive blend of 2D and 3D animation techniques. It won 14 awards and was one of the top 10 movies of 2023, as well as being one of my all-time favorites.
I don't think he planned this out. If I hadn't said it before, by the way, you're a terrible mentor. He did just beat you, so I'm not a terrible mentor. You're both equally terrible.
Congratulations, you've just witnessed 100 years of animation. As you can see, animation has changed a lot since the silent films of the 20s, and it is amazing to see the level of artistry and innovation that can be achieved with animation today. Hi, I'm Kate Parker, and this is my Masterworks presentation, From Sketch to Screen, Learning 2D Animation. Before I start, I should give you a little background as to where I was at the start of this project. I love art and have been doing it pretty much since I could pick up a crayon. So I really wanted to do something for my Masterworks that would involve creativity and art. I thought animation would be a fun skill to learn, as well as an opportunity to improve my drawing skills and get better at digital art. I should note that at the start of this project, I was what I would call a clueless dingus when it comes to any kind of complex technology. So I was diving into this project with nothing except my self-taught art skills and raw determination. In this presentation, I will be giving you a brief history and background of animation, and then I'll be taking you through my process in learning 2D animation and digital art using Blender and Procreate. There are two sections to the process, first being pre-production, then production. At the end, I'll show you how all of these stages come together to make a little animated film. Concept of animation can be traced back to early Greek pottery, or drawings on cave walls by other ancient civilizations, where drawings were made one after the other as the action progressed. However, the first animations were made in the 1800s using devices like the zoetrope, and it was not until the early 20th century that animation really started to take off. The 1930s to 60s is known as the golden age of animation. It all started with Walt Disney, who basically created the modern animation industry. Who here recognizes this character? Right, so almost everyone. It is a testament to Disney's creativity and ingenuity that 96 years after Steamboat Willie, his first Mickey Mouse film, was released, almost everyone knows who Mickey Mouse is. His style of animation was distinctive, and he created some of the most well-known characters of all time, as well as some of the foundational principles of animation, which I will be talking about later in this presentation. His films became very popular in theaters in the 30s and 40s, which was the first time that many people had seen animated films. However, Disney wasn't the only animator in the game. Who here recognizes this character? How about these ones? Bugs Bunny and Tom and Jerry are just a few of the characters that were created by MGM and Warner Brothers. Their cartoons tended to be entertaining, funny skits which appeared in theaters, and then in the 60s on television programs. This leads me to the next era of animation, the American TV era. This is the era that your parents probably grew up in, and it spans from the 70s to the early 2000s. The style of animation became a lot simpler, with a focus on quantity rather than quality. Shows like The Simpsons and South Park are examples of this type of animation. Some other notable animations include the OG Spider-Man, Scooby-Doo, and of course, our favorite lasagna-eating cat, Garfield. During this time, anime, a style of Japanese 2D animation, rose in popularity. Animator Hayao Miyazaki, the founder and director of Studio Ghibli, stands out to me as one of the best animators of this style. His films were all hand-drawn and painted, and he created some of the most iconic Studio Ghibli films, such as My Neighbor Totoro, Spirited Away, and Howl's Moving Castle. After doing this project, I have a whole new appreciation for the level of artistry and detail that went into Miyazaki's films. After this, the invention of CGI, or computer-generated imagery, led to a different style of animation, where characters look and move much more realistically. This is called 3D animation, which is the style that most animated film content is made in today. Some people say that some of the creativity and artistry of earlier animations is lost in CGI animated films. While this may be true for some films, movies like the new Spider-Man have shown that 3D technology combined with the artistry of 2D techniques can create an amazing result. All right, now that you have a sense of the evolution of animation, I will walk you through all the steps to creating my own animated film by combining timeless techniques pioneered by early animators with modern digital techniques, and, programs, and technology. Second. The first stage to creating an animation is pre-production. Pre-production is everything behind the scenes, which includes developing your ideas, storyboards, characters, backgrounds, and shot layout. I started by looking at Pinterest and YouTube for inspiration. I kept a stack of sticky notes close by so I could quickly scribble an idea for an animation when it came to me. I would write down the basic concept, then scribble a character or scene. I found Pinterest really helpful for getting inspiration for characters, background ideas, and drawing styles. YouTube was great for story inspiration and beginner tutorials that showed how to make short, easy animations. Once I felt I had generated enough ideas, I selected 3 of my favorites to move on to the next step of pre-production. Once I have created a storyboard and character sheet for each of these ideas, I will select one to be my final animation. Step 2 in the pre-production process is storyboarding. Storyboarding involves developing your story so there's an engaging plot with a rise and fall of action, and roughly planning out where your characters will be in each shot. There are a few important things to remember when storyboarding. The first thing is position and staging. The position of characters is really important to keep in mind when storyboarding. You want the scene to be focused on where the main action is happening and not have too many distracting details. The second thing to remember is that your drawings don't have to look good. Something around preschool level will do, and as long as you can tell which scribble is which, you're good. The one thing you absolutely must take your time on is the storyline. Your storyboard can have multiple designs, but when you choose the final one, make sure all of the details of the story are well thought out. If you're halfway through your shot layout and realize your ending makes no sense and your story is way too long, you need to walk that idea right on back to the storyboard. By the way, that example was totally not my personal experience. Here are the storyboards for the 3 animations I chose. The first one features that boy from the DreamWorks intro with the fishing pole on the moon. His fishing pole gets stuck on a passing airplane, and he goes for a spin behind it before falling off and landing back on the moon. Second idea starts off with a flower growing into a rose. Then it gets picked and put in a vase where it loses its color. It is abandoned and forgotten for a while before a little girl comes along and picks it up. This was definitely my most well thought out storyboard, but unfortunately it was too ambitious for my first animation. Final storyboard not so loosely follows the storyline of Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne, except the characters are ducks. I was disappointed to find out that I couldn't play the song with the animation because only 7 seconds of any copyrighted music are allowed. Darn. Now that I have 3 reasonably well thought out storyboards, I can move on to the third step, which is character development. Good character development is essential for good animations, like any other kind of film. There are a few major things to consider when creating a character. First, shapes. You want your character to be made out of defined shapes because simple characters are much more memorable and appealing to the audience. Different shapes convey different things about your character's personality, as you can see from these characters I drew. Rounder shapes tend to represent youth and make your character appear softer and more friendly, whereas harsher lines and angles are more stern and adult. A good test to do is to look at the silhouette of your character. It shouldn't be too detailed and should be easily recognizable by silhouette alone. Once you have the basic shapes, you can start to fill in the details and refine your sketch. Add clothes and accessories that work with your character's personality. You want to give your audience an impression of your character's personality as soon as they step on screen. So careful consideration of clothing and details is important. Last thing is color. Color is a really good way to give the audience an emotional and psychological connection to the characters. Children tend to connect more to colors than adults do, and are more likely to remember characters based on color alone, which is why a lot of characters in children's cartoons have saturated, vibrant color palettes. Here are the rough character sheets for my animations. I only included color for the flower idea because honestly, I was kind of rushing through the process to get to the animation, which is not what you should do. Now I'm ready to choose one of my ideas to complete. I chose the duck one because I thought it would be easiest to animate. Yeah, right. Final step before animation is shot layout. There are a few different ways to do this. The method that most 2D animators use is called a rough pass. It's a little like storyboarding and involves sketching in all of the key poses so you can go back later and refine and color them. The second method was an experiment I thought would work, but didn't. I got a free Blender template of a duck and then positioned it as needed in the different poses. The template should act as a placeholder so that I can draw on it later. The only problem was that the template was actually 3D, so I couldn't draw on top of it in 2D. I will now play a run-through of my shot layout. All right. Okay. Now you may be thinking, that looks unfinished. That's because it is. You see, it was at this point in the pre-production process that I started to have some issues. First was that because I hadn't thought out the story properly, it got longer and longer and longer and longer as I added more details. The second was that I was not happy with the characters being ducks because to me, they seemed to have more human qualities. I redid the character sheet with human characters instead of ducks, but I wasn't happy with that either. It was mid-February, and with 4 months left, I really had to get going on the animation. So I did the only thing I could think of. I scrapped the whole thing and started over. Admittedly, this did set me back in the timeline a lot and had both Jen and I very stressed, but it was necessary because I had bitten off way more than I could chew. So here's the new storyboard and characters which I drew in my sketchbook. The new storyboard, after a bit of editing, was 8 shots long, which was much better than my first one, which was 25 shots long. In hindsight, I should have shortened it even more, seeing as I only had 2 months to animate at this point. Even though I had changed the story, I still had kept the duck character because I was kind of attached to him. I ditched the skateboard, though. These are the backgrounds which I made in Procreate, in the order that they appear in the animation. Now the pre-production process is officially complete. At this point, it was late March, which left me with significantly less time to animate than I would have liked, but the thing about being a procrastinating perfectionist is that I'm very good at getting ridiculous amounts of work done in a short period of time. The production phase was where the bulk of the learning happened, and it came learning the programs, which were Procreate, a digital art app, and Blender, a free animation software, learning animation technique, and putting everything together in post-production. I'm really happy with my progress in digital art throughout this project. My art went from looking like this to looking like this. Procreate was relatively easy to learn, but refining my skills took a lot more time. I used Procreate for the backgrounds and did some other art that was not strictly necessary for Masterworks, but you could say I was procrastinating. I mean practicing. I also made a little animation of a snail on Procreate's very basic animation program. It took me all of 5 minutes while in the car driving to soccer practice, and it was my very first animation, which is why it is rather wobbly. Let me see if I can play it. The second program, Blender, was definitely a challenge. I had to get a whole other computer to run it, so despite the program itself being free, the computer required to run it was definitely not. As well, the learning curve was more of a backwards L situation, with lots of technical difficulties of unknown origins along the way, which was, it was not until April and May that I finally started to get it, which was unfortunate because that meant I had too much left to complete the animation. I'm not going to get into the specifics of learning Blender because we'd be here for days and you guys would probably all fall asleep. What I will say is this: as a beginner, if you have lots of time and dedication, Blender is a great tool because it's free and there are lots of YouTube tutorials to learn from. You can also do both 2D and 3D animation on Blender, and you can even mix the two to create interesting effects, like in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Even though I had some serious beef with Blender while doing this project, I definitely gained some very useful computer and problem-solving skills through figuring it out. My next task, after somewhat mastering the technology, was learning the technique. And who better to learn from than the master of animation himself, Walt Disney. Disney's 12 principles are what most, if not all, animators swear by, and are the building blocks of any type of animation. I chose the 5 that I think are the most important to explain to you. These are squash and stretch, timing and spacing, straight ahead and pose to pose, follow through and overlapping action, and exaggeration. Next time you are watching an animated cartoon, you may be able to recognize some of these. Squash and stretch helps give a cartoony feel to animations by exaggerating the anticipation and action of movements. It also shows the weight and elasticity of materials. Like you can see in this example, the ball on the right is much bouncier because it squashes more on impact. Timing and spacing is what creates the illusion of objects moving in the time they would take in real life. Timing is how many frames the object takes to complete the action. Most animation runs at 24 frames per second, so there are different ways you can break that down. You can draw every frame, which is called drawing on 1s, every other frame on 2s, and so on. I ended up drawing on like 4s and 5s for most of the project. But anyway, spacing refers to the physical space between each pose and the action. I personally struggled a lot with this principle because, as I mentioned before, 24 frames is only 1 second of animation. So I'd be drawing, la-di-da, I think I was doing pretty good, go me, and then I'd run the animation and it would be like half a second long. Like seriously, I blinked and I missed it. Straight ahead and pose to pose are 2 methods of drawing. Straight ahead animation is what it sounds like, drawing each pose one after the other in a straight ahead fashion. Pose to pose is where you draw your key poses and then add frames in between to connect those poses to create smooth action. I personally used a mix of the two, with my walk cycles mostly drawn in pose to pose and everything else in straight ahead. Follow through refers to how parts of the object, like hair and clothes, will continue to move after the main object has stopped moving. Overlapping action is what it sounds like, 2 actions happening at the same time, such as arms swinging while walking. This principle is also pretty hard to learn because animating is hard, let alone animating 2 things that are happening at the same time but at different speeds. It all made me very confused. Exaggeration is my favorite principle because it takes an animation from being good to being excellent. Exaggerating the movements of characters emphasizes the main action and makes it more entertaining to watch. Nobody goes to theaters to watch characters bumble around half-heartedly. They want excitement, comedy, and action. And without exaggeration, that emotional connection isn't there. It is difficult to incorporate exaggeration as a beginner without it looking like you just drew it badly. Exaggeration is sort of the next step up to creating more dynamic, interesting films. After I learned all these principles, I did a little practice with this bouncy ball, which demonstrates the squash and stretch principle very well, and I was pretty happy with it. I think. That was the extent of my practice before I dove into making the film, which did not go so smoothly. I was basically just winging it, learning stuff as I went along, because while the 12 principles are helpful, I also needed to learn how to make things like walk cycles and stuff like that. As I started animating, I was surprised by the fact that animation is way harder than I first thought. My first shot turned out really bad and made my inner perfectionist want to throw my computer out the window. I'll show you what I mean with the screen recording I took. As you can see, there are all sorts of problems going on, like the duck's feet not moving with the duck, extra lines, and bad timing and spacing. Here's my first shot again after I redid it. Oh, no, it's playing. Okay. All right. I won't show you anymore because you'll see the rest of the film soon, but that 7-second animation probably took me about 6 hours. I now have so much respect for all the animators out there because I've felt firsthand how long it takes to create each second of animation. Now that I've learned animation techniques and technology and have put this knowledge into creating my shots, I need to put it together in post-production. Post-production is a very customizable step. It entirely depends on the scale and purpose of the project. On the simpler end, you can just string your shots together in a video editor and call it a day. You can also go down the route of sound effects, visual effects, music, color grading, etc., to make your film look more professional. For my project, I went the simpler route because I did not want a lot of extra technological stuff to figure out in post-production. However, there are a few steps I had to do before I put my shots into a video editor. First thing was compositing. Compositing basically means merging multiple layers of animation together. In my case, I had 2 layers, the backgrounds and the characters. In order for them to become a scene, I needed to put them together so they render as one image. In Blender, you use these things called nodes and make a little family tree looking situation, and this connects the images to each other. The other thing I had to do was rendering. This enables you to take your finished animation and all of its data out of Blender and into a video format. This involved me messing around with various settings, watching lots of YouTube tutorials, and having to look up what subsurface scattering and ambient occlusion meant, among other things. Final step in my post-production process was putting everything together in a video editor. I used CapCut because it was free, and I kind of have a thing for free software. It was also very easy to use and had a library of great uncopyrighted music that was perfect for my soundtrack. Now that you've seen all the steps it took me to create an animated film and all the challenges that came with it. So without further ado, I present to you my film, Donut. Okay, through doing this project, I learned a few things about myself. One is that I did not enjoy animating as much as I thought it would. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. I found the actual drawing of the animation to be repetitive and boring, and I had trouble motivating myself to work on it. Because of my procrastinating tendencies and poor planning skills, I was also quite stressed for a lot of this project. I have quite a few regrets, but the biggest ones are that I didn't start animating earlier and that I didn't make the poofy thing on the duck's head hot pink. That would have made him way cooler. There were a lot of aspects of the project that I enjoyed, though. I had a lot of fun with the pre-production process, and I enjoyed thinking up and drawing story ideas and characters. I also loved doing digital art on Procreate, and I will definitely continue to do more in the future. I'm pretty proud of myself for learning and making the animation in the short time frame that I had. I feel much more confident in my computer skills now, and I think I could more easily learn other graphics programs like Photoshop and Illustrator now that I know how to use Blender and Procreate. So despite all the challenges and learning I had to do, I'm pretty happy with the outcome. This project wouldn't have been possible without the help and support of so many people, and I would like to take the time to thank some of them. First of all, thank you so much to my external advisors, Jeff White and Amy Senden, who's somewhere online. Jeff, I'm so grateful to you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to help me with Blender and helping me work through all your helping me work through all my technical difficulties. I couldn't have done it without you. Amy, thank you so much for lending your time and expertise as an animator to help with the technical side of this project. Thank you as well for giving me resources and exercises to start animating with, and for giving me feedback on my test animations. I'm so grateful to you both. Jen, my faculty advisor, your ability to write strongly worded, slightly terrifying emails when I was approaching a due date kept me from slipping past said due dates. Thank you for keeping me on track and for having faith that I would get it done eventually. To my family, Mom, Dad, and Lizzie, for supporting me with my project. You helped me stay on track and gave me space and snacks when I was working on this project. To my friends, thank you for always being there and for offering advice when I needed it. Y'all are the best. And lastly, thank you all for watching my presentation.
Congratulations, Ms. Parker. What a comprehensive, deep investigation, inquiry, and presentation on 2D animation. I will never for sure think of a donut in the same way in the future as having now watched your film. I'm just awed by the breadth and depth of the learning that you have gone through and demonstrated to all of us here in attendance today. So. It is now time to open up to the questions, and let me begin with the advisors. Jen first. Go ahead.
First of all, I would like to say how honored I am to have worked with you. Your intelligence, your curiosity and creativity, and also your high bar that you set for yourself is commendable, and also I think really it has shown in this presentation, but it shows in all of your work that you do. But it also was really nice to work with you as a person, so I got to know you better. That said, there were some terrifying emails, but the best email was last night with the title, "I'm done!"
Yep, I did finish last night.
So the procrastinating perfectionist does her work well. I would like to ask a question of you. You said that your favorite principle from Disney's Principles of Animation is exaggeration. Mm-hmm. So where in your short movie Donuts did you use exaggeration?
I didn't use a lot of exaggeration because I was mainly focusing on like actually making it good instead of like making it excellent, like I said. Yeah, so like, I mean, I kind of, yeah, like sometimes I'd exaggerate like the pauses, like where he's kind of like at the end where he's like the question mark. He's like, what? And then I kept that pause like pretty long, so like for effect and stuff. But in my actual like animation, I didn't really include much exaggeration because exaggeration is really hard to do.
I noticed that the comb on his head was around his.
That's like follow through and overlapping
Okay,
action.
there you go. Over to the professional.
I just want to say congratulations, Kate, because you should know like 95% of animation isn't finished, it's abandoned. And the fact that you actually got this across the finish line is such a major accomplishment. So you feel good about it. You should know that that Spider-Man movie you keep referencing also finished kind of like this. Like almost all of the projects we do start off with a dribble of completion and then a lot of procrastination and then a panic of finish at the end. So I think you had a very typical animation experience. The thing that I'm interested in is we always have limitations, and a lot of times it's money, but really money is time. And I think you ran right into the time limitation.
Yes, I did.
But in a way, it's the creativity around the limitations that make the work better. And in what way did the very compressed time that you had to do this work actually make the animation better? Or did you had to come up with an idea that made it better?
Okay, so my first like design for the duck animation was like really bad because I was like super uncreative. So I was like, ooh, I like this. I don't know. I thought the storyline of like Skater Boy was kind of funny. I was like, oh, ducks. I like ducks. But then the problem was like it was so long that like because I kind of, as I said in my presentation, like I did not think through the storyboard at all. Like and then the ending was really bad, so I just kept adding and adding and adding. So like I was happy that I had to shorten it, not just because of the time, but like because it was definitely like this one is much better. As well, I originally this one was 10 shots long, but I had to cut out like 2 shots because I ran out of time and they were also kind of unnecessary. So like that helped, yeah.
That's great. I remember the first meeting we had when you showed me all of the ones that you were going to do, and I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
Like at the beginning, I was planning on doing 3 animations. I'm glad I didn't do that. That would have been so much work. Yeah.
I just have to say it was really wonderful to work with you, and actually we met, like, as far as the amount of support you had, like, you were always there to answer questions, but all of this was on your own. Like, I'm super impressed how much you learned. All this very technical software, which can oftentimes be a detriment to the art because you spend so long just trying to get around the technical problems. But what you came up with in the end is really fantastic and a great narrative, which is the whole point of it. So
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Great job.
To realize your trajectory was not very far from the professional world of filmmaking. So bravo to you. Let's open it up now to our audience, to questions. Yes, go ahead, Storm.
Thank you for that lovely presentation, Ms. Parker. I love animating myself, I'm not very good at it, but it's inspiring to see somebody else who put so much time into it. How long would you say you spent total hours on this animation?
Oh my gosh, this is so funny. Jen was like, oh, I bet someone's gonna ask you how long it took. You better think of an answer. I was like, I don't know. I'd say it probably took me like 300 hours to do like that. Well, not that, but like the whole everything. Yeah, it was very long.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great job.
Thank you.
300 hours. Impressive. Parker.
Amazing presentation, Ms. Parker. I was just wondering, if you don't think that animation could be right for you, is there another job in arts that you would maybe prefer that maybe has some relation to animation but isn't?
Well, I think like, okay, photography is really interesting. I would definitely, like if I wasn't doing this for my Masterworks, I would do photography. Because yeah, I like photography, and also now that I've done this Masterworks, like I have more of an idea of like the editing software and like stuff like that you can use. So yeah, I would consider that not necessarily as a job, but like as a hobby. Also, probably like, yeah, like illustration. I really liked coming up with the ideas and like designing the story and stuff like that. So yeah, and I just, like the thing was about animation is like, yes, I was drawing, but I was also drawing like the same thing over and over again with like slight variations. So like, yeah, it was, yeah. So I prefer to draw like spontaneously, kind of, yeah.
Wow, what an amazing collection of skills you have. Those early illustrations that you made and the storyboarding along the way. You've got talent in multiple directions. Some more questions, Mr. Carter.
Mr. Parker, wow, that animation was tight. I love animated shorts, and I thought you did an amazing. Telling a short story well is really, really hard to do. You use these really simple things that told such an effective story. I love how the donut changes meaning in that thing. It's as simple like that. So I'm super impressed. And like I said, I think that's really hard to do. You spoke a little bit about some of the challenges you had about wrestling with your inner perfectionist and having to abandon a big pile of work partway through and saying this just isn't going to work. Do you feel comfortable sharing with us what that's like, that struggle, and how hard that is? I think, because we all face those things and often we back down, and you stuck it through. So
yeah. Okay, so yeah, like for this project, I only started, okay, this is really bad, but I did like everything until like, I'd say January, February-ish was like pre-production and stuff, and I was like really scared to like start animating because I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna be so bad, and like I hate when my art looks bad. So yeah, that like mental barrier was like pretty difficult to overcome. Also, yeah, but like, and then even like in the last 2 months, I'd be like, oh, I have like a month left. Oh, I have 2 weeks left. Oh, I have 5 days left. Oh my god, it's tomorrow. Like that was me last night, like putting everything into a video editor. I was like, I should not have procrastinated this much, but yeah. It was definitely like a struggle.
Yeah, well, and so where did that come from for you, that moment where you said, oh my gosh, like, I have to start animating, but I'm scared? What made you take that first pencil line?
Mostly approaching deadlines. And like I also was like, oh my god, I'm not gonna stand in front of the school and have like nothing to present. So I was like, I have to do this. And also like even like for myself, like actually this weekend I said to my mom, I'm like, I'm done, I'm not doing this. And that was like when I had probably like 5 shots, so I had like 3 shots left. And then I was like, wait, I can't do this. I must complete it. So then yeah. That was, yeah.
Thank you for doing that, because you put something really special into the world for all of us to enjoy.
Thank you.
Take note, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Wise wisdom. Yes, go ahead, Pam.
I have a really quick question, Ms. Parker. Back to sort of the use of digital compared to the paper and pencil. Do you think it took longer to make the using digital software and all that stuff than it would have if you just sat down and said, I'm going to make an old school animation like Walt Disney?
It's hard to say because like there are some things that the computer does for you that are really useful. Like for example, for some of the walk cycles I did, like I basically duplicated the frames so that it just kind of plays like twice, so I wouldn't have to animate every single thing. And also they kind of do in-betweens for you. Like if you put on like automatic keying, it'll like fill in the gaps. So like if you're doing traditional 2D animation, it takes a lot longer and you need more like drawing skills, but also like Disney used like these things called cells, it's like a celluloid like paper. It's like plasticky paper, and so you can see through it. So you kind of like have a stack of them, and then you draw, and then you flip over and then draw, and you have to like keep flipping. And it's like, I don't know, I just didn't want to do that. Yeah, but it probably would have been easier like technologically, but yeah.
Welcome, Adrian, our teacher.
Ms. Parker, that was beautiful. Really, really was. I'm glad you got it done. And I'm glad you got to see it. My question for you, I love animated things as well, but I noticed in even your presentation things like Moana and the Minions and even Peter Parker there, they all look kind of the same. Do you think this is a trend, that it's just the style, or do you feel that technology has an effect on what's produced?
Yeah, so like I'd say like traditional 2D animation has a similar look. Like they have like really, like, you know, the characters have like really big eyes and stuff, and like their features are kind of exaggerated. But yeah, so like with 3D animation, they look more realistic. Like their like construction of their like bodies is like more realistic, and yeah, so like their faces also, like the kind of like texture of their, like they look 3D, you know. So yeah, I think technology definitely affects how it looks. But
because the technology, that's just the style that people are using the technology for, or do you think the technology says like it's better this way or it's easier to do it this way?
well, yeah, because if you're doing 3D modeling, is like you have really like shapes. It's like more like you're doing like geometric 3D shapes that are kind of like formed. I don't really know much about 3D. I tried it. It was hard. I just gave up. Yeah, but I think, yeah, and also because it's computer generated, it's harder to get like organic lines, which is why like in Spider-Man, I'm sorry, I just keep referencing that, but like they use 3D technology to make like the avatar, and then they like individual artists would like color it, so it's like a comic effect.
Right.
So yeah.
Thank you.
Complex. Sheila, just a couple more questions and we'll read.
As part of congratulations, and listening to you, I can literally visually see the growth process of self-discovery and learning to manage yourself. Through this project, what is the one thing that you feel you learned that you're able to utilize as you go on to high school?
Well, I definitely learned how to like, okay, well, if I take like an animation, I did sign up for animation, but like I think I might change that as my elective, but like, yeah, so like computer skills and like the graphics programs, like I think as far as I can tell, there's like a lot of similarities between like, for example, like Procreate and Illustrator and Photoshop are all like digital art apps, but you can do different things with them. So now I also know like the terminology, like there's certain like video editing, like weird formats and stuff that like I know what things are. So like that will translate into like other things I can learn on the computer in high school. Yeah.
Okay, our final question, Charlotte.
Congratulations, Ms. Parker. My question is, do you think when you rewatch old movies like Alice in Wonderland or old Disney movies that this will affect how you think about them because you know how they are made? And
yeah, definitely. The time, like I have so much appreciation for like old school Disney movies like Snow White and Pinocchio and stuff like that. Like they were animating every single frame. Like hand-drawn, hand-painted. Yeah, it's super impressive. But I also have like respect for like 3D animators today, like modern with technology, because I know technology is very hard to figure out, and there's like, yeah, like my computer was crashing like all the time from that. Like Blender is like a massive thing on my computer, and it's, yeah.